drink your milkshake. I drink it up!
Don't bully me, Daniel!
This is There Will Be Blood, the Oscar-winning 2007 film that cemented Paul Thomas Anderson and Daniel Day-Lewis as one of the greatest pairings of actor and director in the history of movies. This pivotal scene is the perfect example of what makes this slow-burn story such an epic tale, and it reaches its climax in a truly gruesome display of cruelty and inhumanity. Daniel Plainview transforms into a monster fueled by pure ego and rage. It's a cinematic masterclass in instilling fear in an audience, but would it have worked if Plainview was played by anyone other than Daniel Day-Lewis? Before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe to Nerdstalgic if you haven't done so already. There Will Be Blood is a loose adaptation of the Upton Sinclair novel Oil, which is a third-person investigative narrative centering on the fallout and background of the Harding administration's Teapot Dome scandal. Paul Thomas Anderson, the writer and director behind projects like Boogie Nights, Magnolia, and Punch Drunk Love, was living in England when he found the book at an antique bookshop. Feeling nostalgic for California, he began reading about the state's history and the widely cutthroat days of oil magnates. Anderson became obsessed with the idea of making a film set in this era. As he developed the story and began writing in earnest, the story evolved and shifted. He eventually retitled it There Will Be Blood. As he wrote, the only actor he could imagine pulling off the main character was the Oscar award-winning method performer, Daniel Day-Lewis.
I've abandoned my child.
Say it louder. Say it louder.
I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my boy!
Despite having never met him, Anderson attempted to tailor the part to Day-Lewis specifically. At the climax of the film, Paul Dano's Eli comes to visit Daniel Plainview to ask him for help. Up until this point, the whole film had been push and pull between Eli, who had been using his position in the church to accomplish his goals, and Plainview, a ruthless capitalist hell-bent on extracting as much money from the land Eli and his family had lived on for generations. Eli has fallen on hard times and wants to finally sell Plainview his land. Only, Daniel Plainview is one step ahead of him. He's been drilling the oil out of all the surrounding areas and siphoning out everything of value. He purposely left Eli's land dead and useless. The scene first starts out with Plainview coolly and calmly explaining these things to Eli. The joy and delight in his eyes is apparent. He relishes emotionally destroying Eli. The scene is subtle, and it has reversals and layers that are not immediately apparent, and that's what truly makes it so terrifying.
I am the third revelation. I told you I would eat you.
We're married.
The performance Day-Lewis gives is like watching someone walk into quicksand. You know it's going to happen, and you spend the entire time hoping that they'll be able to escape, but you know they won't. Day-Lewis stated that his only goal with Plainview was an honest examination of a life. This agnosticism surrounding the objective atrocities that he commits in the film is why his performance is so disturbing. You feel a dispassionate removal of moral hierarchy from his actions. When analyzing the scene, you can see just how in tune the two performers are. They're genuinely experiencing this moment together. Paul Dano's movements through denial, anger, disbelief, and then a groveling acceptance and pleading for his life serve as the backbone to the scene. Without his amazingly understated and vital rhythms,
I am a false prophet. God is a superstition.
you don't get Day-Lewis's operatic evil having a genuine sense of reality.
That land has been had. Nothing you can do about it. It's gone. It's had.
If you would just take this lease, Daniel.
Drainage! Drainage, Eli.
The fact that the scene quickly escalates to Plainview hurling insults, to outright bullying, to full-on attacking Eli could read as campy or over the top in a less skilled actor's hands, but Day-Lewis is in complete control of the scene, and the audience feels terror and exhilaration simultaneously as he revels in bullying Eli. Watching the scene is an experience all by itself. It steadily builds until Daniel Plainview begins hurling bowling balls at Eli. One of the balls hits a bucket of mop water, acting as an exclamation mark on the scene. And it all climaxes in Plainview grabbing a bowling pin and then brutally murdering Eli. It truly is unthinkable that anyone else could bring Plainview's animalistic intensity to life. It makes complete sense that Anderson was obsessed with the idea of Day-Lewis playing the collegiate and coiled businessman. Surprisingly, the co-creation of Daniel Plainview did not have much back-and-forth collaboration between the writer and director. Anderson was squirreled away writing, breathing life into the long-forgotten world of the early days of the oil rush. Day-Lewis was consumed with the idea of lending an air of verisimilitude to this objectively operatic and larger-than-life character. Contrary to what you might have assumed, much of the character development for Plainview was actually done by Day-Lewis by himself. He would call Anderson, ask a few questions, and then hang up. Their discussions were relatively brief, with Anderson giving Day-Lewis full control of the idea of Daniel Plainview. When asked about this process, Anderson said, "As far as I'm concerned, I didn't need to give him anything more than he wanted to know." That's not to say that Anderson wasn't involved at all. Obviously, his writing was essential to birthing this character. He had 3 sources of inspiration initially. Count Dracula was the first analog that Anderson thought about. And when looking at the finished movie, you can really feel that. The fact that Plainview is introduced shrouded completely by darkness, how he's literally and metaphorically insatiable, constantly trying to suck the blood out of the land and people around him. When asked about it, Anderson said, "I just had it in my head underneath it all that we were making a horror movie. Maybe we go to horror movies because we want to see something horrible happen. In the same way we might get excited to look at a car crash. In some ways, Plainview's story is a bit like a car crash, one that keeps just getting worse." The second component that made Plainview was J. Arnold Ross, the original character from Sinclair's book Oil. He and his son discover oil while hunting, and we follow them as they become embroiled deeper and deeper into the oil world. There Will Be Blood was adapted from roughly only the initial 150 pages of the book, and loosely at that. But still, J. Arnold Ross and his son Bunny serve as the sketched-out archetypes of Daniel and H.W. The third and arguably largest influence on Anderson's conception of Plainview was the real-life big oil magnate Edward Deheny. Much of Plainview's in-film biography and exploits were based on this man. In fact, the final scene of the movie was filmed in Deheny's former mansion. The animalistic ferocity and energy that Day-Lewis displays in the climactic scene is in stark contrast to the rest of the film. Plainview is a character that is defined by his calculating mind, staunch dedication, and unwavering determination. The film itself is a slow-burn rumination on how far humanity will go to get what it wants. And this scene is the climax of that. Plainview harbors a myriad of emotions for Eli: resentment, anger, and pity, all of which glow through him in this scene. The scene is intimate yet simultaneously explosive, which is what really drives home how horrifying Plainview is. The whole movie, you've been waiting for him to reach his breaking point. Day-Lewis plays him as a man who's simultaneously barely in control of himself and constantly manipulating everyone around him. The audience has been waiting for him to lose control for the entirety of the 158-minute runtime, and when he does, it doesn't disappoint. It catapults the film into having one of the most memorable scenes in movie history. Ultimately, There Will Be Blood is a perfect example of what happens when a director and an actor join forces to create a perfect, terrifying performance. From the cold, shark-like behavior patterns of Daniel Plainview that were established by Anderson, to his deeply human motivations and broken soul that Day-Lewis so beautifully embodied. Both of these aspects of the persona we watch in the film dovetail into an amazingly complex and cutthroat character that left audiences around the globe enraptured and frightened to the bone. Daniel Plainview is so scary because we inherently understand his level of commitment and drive to achieve. He's ostensibly weaponized capitalism. He's the face of pure ambition. His mind is constantly scheming the demise of those around him. Part of it is words on the page, yes, but most of it is Day-Lewis's performance. It's his body language, the angularity of his posture. It's in his vocal delivery and in his trademark hat. There are some movies where the star is obviously in the picture as a means of furthering their brand or portraying a character in the hopes of finally getting that big award show nod. And while There Will Be Blood was critically very well received and went home with nominations for Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor, nothing about this film feels calculated in order to make an awards run, which is probably why Day-Lewis ultimately went home with the Best Actor win. It feels like both Anderson and Day-Lewis were trying to create the most honest depiction of the character Daniel Plainview possible, no matter how horrifying the revelations they uncovered truly were.
I'm finished.
Well, that's it for this episode. What do you think? Is Daniel Plainview Daniel Day-Lewis's most iconic role? Were you frightened by the final scene of the film when you first watched it? Let us know your thoughts down below, and as always, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.